Hello and welcome to Bourbon Rocks. Tonight we've got a special treat for you. We're going to do what may be a first on the internet. It is a review and a comparison or a flight of the bourbons from the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. Now, I've seen some videos where the BTAC bourbons are compared, but what I'm going to do is something special here. I'm actually going to propose a fourth bourbon from Buffalo Trace that, if I was Harlan Wheatley, the master distiller, or the executives at Sazerac, which owns Buffalo Trace, there's a fourth bourbon that I would propose for them to release annually and include in this. So that's what's going to be magical here tonight. Plus the fact that, of course, we're going to review some of the best bourbons in the world, the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. Now, I do all my videos in one take. And this is also being done in one take. But I'm going to just cheat a little bit here because I have reviewed each of these bourbons individually in previous videos. And so I made some note cards here basically just to remind myself of what I thought or how I believe, what I nosed and what I tasted basically when we had it the first time. And of course, you got to understand that, when you try bourbons a second time, you won't always get exactly the same thing. Some days you may like one bourbon better than another, and the next day it might change. But when you get to this level of bourbons, you're always going to like it. It's just a question of, how much you like it this day versus the other. And also, when we did these, I was doing them individually, so I wasn't comparing them directly. And what we found when we did the Pappy flight, that when I was reviewing the Pappies individually, I thought that the 20 was my favorite, but when I put them all head to head and did an actual flight of Pappy, I actually found I like the 23 better than the 20. So you might find a little bit of differences when you compare them. So I'm going to wear my reading glasses here because I do need them when I'm reading things up close. That's part of getting more mature. So at any rate, what we have here obviously is the William LaRue Weller. This is the wheated bourbon in the BTAC collection. It's the wheated mash bill, same as Pappy Van Winkle. This is the George T. Stagg, which is from the #1 mash bill, the low rye mash bill. This is the Eagle Rare, which is also from the low rye mash bill. And we're going to talk about each one of these and the differences. But fourth, I'm going to show you what I propose to be the fourth bourbon in the BTAC collection. Now, this bourbon is not produced annually, but if they did, I think they should include it. People talk about the 5 mash bills from Buffalo Trace. You've got the wheated mash bill, which is the William LaRue Weller, the standard Wellers, the Pappy Van Winkles. You've got the #1 mash bill, which is the low rye mash bill, which includes the Staggs, the George T. Stagg and Stagg Jr., which I think is just called Stagg now, the Eagle Rare, the Buffalo Trace, the E.H. Taylor, and the Benchmark, which is their basic standard entry-level bourbon. And then you have mash bill #2, which is what they call the high rye mash bill. But as I've said multiple times, I think it's really more of a medium rye mash bill. But that includes the Blantons, the Elmer T. Lees, the Rock Hill Farms, and Ancient Age, which is, again, sort of their entry-level to that mash bill. Hancock Presidential, I think, is also in there. And then you've got the major rye mash bill, which is going to be your Pappy Rye and your Sazeracs, both the basic Sazerac as well as the Sazerac 18, which does go along with the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. And we will review that once we start doing ryes. Right now, it's Bourbon Rock, so we're obviously doing mostly bourbons, but eventually we'll do some ryes and even some scotches and Irishes and some interesting things. But right now, these are the bourbons. And then you have that one high rye mash bill, which is 95% rye. And that only goes into the E.H. Taylor rye. So those are the 5 major mash bills. But Buffalo Trace does have some experimental mash bills, some things that they don't release all the time. And one of them is a 4-grain mash bill. That's right, with corn, obviously, because it's a bourbon, rye, wheat, and barley. So 4 grains. And what is that one Buffalo Trace 4-grain product? Well, that's what I propose that they should make annually and add to the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. And that is the E.H. Taylor 4-grain. So we're going to pretend in our little world here, in Bourbon Rocks world, that this is what we propose to be the 4th bourbon in the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. And I don't know if anyone out there from Buffalo Trace or Sazerac is listening, but hopefully this is what I would love to see personally added to the collection. So let's talk about them. And I'll tell you basically what I said when I reviewed them individually. And again, I don't want to bias myself. This is not a blind tasting. I know exactly what I'm tasting. So it's not blinded, and I'm not going to, be biased by what I thought the last time. I'm going to really, nose them and taste them individually today. But I'll tell you what I thought the first time. So the H. Taylor 4-grain, this is a bottled in bond product, so it has to be 100 proof. It's reportedly 12 years old, basically, of aging. And I thought there was like a lot of vanilla in the nose, some candy corn, caramel, apple, some peach, like a cloved orange even. And on the palate, I kind of kept that sort of that Halloween party flavor, the candied apple and some of the candy corn, sort of a peach orchard, caramel corn, maybe a warm muffin, some pumpkin pie spice I thought was in it. And so it was very, very complex, some of the flavors coming from wheat, some coming from rye, and some coming from the corn. The only problem I really had with this was that it was thin, and the finish was too short for such an expensive product. It's good, and it's not incredibly short, but compared to the rest of these, this was a very short finish. And even though it did have a lot of flavors in it, thought it was just a little bit, too thin and not quite complex, or not quite long enough. It's like the flavors sort of faded away much too quickly. So that was my first initial thought. Then we moved to the Eagle Rare. Now the Eagle Rare is bottled at 101 proof, but it's aged for 17 years. Okay, so presumably it's going to have a lot of oak in it because it's in the barrel for such a long time. This bottle came from 2019. Each year these 3 bourbons come out, and so they're going to vary year to year, and you might find one to be better in one year and another to be better in a different year and so forth. Whereas this was, I'm not sure if it's a one-off product, if they've ever done it again, but it certainly does not come out yearly. So 17 years on the Eagle Rare, and 101 proof. I thought this was like fruity cobbler here. It hits you right away with that blackberry cobbler. And there's some spice on the nose, a little cinnamon toast crunch. You get into the palate. Get a little initially you get a little bit of citrus forward flavors on the palate, and they tend to fade away. And then back comes all of that berry cobbler, like a Mrs. Smith's mixed berry cobbler, with the brown sugar crumbles and so forth on it, and very fruity, very cobblery, and that citrus sort of fades away. When it gets to the finish, it's a medium to long finish. The fruit tends to linger. That oak and those vanillins from that extra aging really kind of linger in there on that finish and so forth. But it's definitely a fruity, cobblery type. Not as spicy, even though it is a rye mash bill. It's still more sweet, more fruit forward, and more fruit all the way through, for that matter. Again, that cobbler-ness and those oak and vanilla flavors from the barrel tend to linger in there on the finish. The George T. Stagg, same mash bill, but this one now is barrel proof. It's aged not quite as long. This is 15 years old, aged for 15 years, whereas the Eagle Rare is aged for 17 years. But whereas the Eagle Rare is bottled at 101 proof, this George T. Stagg is barrel proof, and my bottle came in at 130.4 proof, and this is the 2020 release. And so on the nose, initially, that high proof just hits you right away. You get that alcohol right on the nose, so you got to step back and come back and nose it again. And then that warm cinnamon roll, a little spicy pepper. It's definitely spicier. And then when you get to the palate, you really get that Cinnabon. That cinnamon roll, snickerdoodle, some caramel, some leather, more oak comes through midway through. A lot of baking spice. Not much fruit. This is much fruitier. This is much spicier between the two. And then the very, very long finish, but surprisingly sweet at the end. It's a little spicy mostly through the palate, but the finish actually finished to sweet, and that spice tended to evaporate. But this thing's hot, very hot, very hot. Okay, it's going to drink its proof. You're going to know it's 130.4 proof. And then we come to the William LaRue Weller, and you've heard me in multiple videos saying that this is one of the best bourbons in the entire world, and I still believe that. I think this rivals Pappy any day. It is absolutely phenomenal, the weeded expression. The William LaRue Weller, this one is aged about 12 years, so not as long, similar to the 4-grade actually. But this is barrel proof, so this thing's coming in at 134.5 proof. It'll vary every year. Mine is 134.5. This is the 2020 edition as well. 12 years, 134.5 proof. Same deal on the nose, like the Stag. You're going to get that little blast of alcohol initially. And you guys, stand back and do it again. And you get some brown sugar, some cinnamon apple pie, raisiny. And then when you get to the palate, this is where this thing just completely blooms. It shines. It is like a Krispy Kreme donut with that vanilla custard on the inside. Very creamy. And you got some like tad bit of cocoa chocolate, like that chocolate icing on that vanilla custard donut. It is absolutely amazing. You may be a little pecan in there, pecan sandies, and then that finish is very, very long. Minty, the chocolate and raisin still in there, raisin bread, but not so hot. Even though it's hotter than the Stag, I actually thought that it drank a lot lower than the Stag did. This is definitely at its proof point. This is, I think, actually drinks lower than its proof point. Very, very, very amazing. Hard to beat this. Anyway, that's my first interpretation. We'll put the cards away. Now we're going to taste. And by the way, most of my videos do run around the 9 to 11 minute range. You start to lose people's interest if you get too long on YouTube. But when I am doing these flights like I did with the Pappy, that was an exceptionally long 40-minute video. I'm going to try to keep this one a little bit lower. But again, if you find the videos too long, you can always read the transcript on the website, bourbonrocks.com. We do post transcripts of all of these. So if you want to just kind of glance quickly at what I say. All right, so here we go. And you can see my little flight board here, my Glencairn glasses. Interestingly enough, I've got a little Glencairn glass for each one of them. Here's my Taylor, here's my Eagle Rare, here's my Stag, and here's my Weller, and so forth. So let's do a little pour. Again, E.H. Taylor, 4-grain, bottled and bond at 100 proof, aged 12 years. Eagle Rare from the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, 17 years of aging and bottled at 101 proof. By the way, these bottles are extremely expensive, and I am not stingy with my pours. When I did the Pappy video, I said, what kind of crazy person would put that? There were several $1,000s worth of alcohol on the table, but hey, this is Bourbon Rocks. We do it for you. And it's not always going to be like this. I've said before, this is not designed to be an elitist website. We are starting out with some of the best bourbons in the world because I want to wow you guys. Hey, I'm new to the internet, so I want to, kind of get followers and so forth. But eventually, we're going to come down to we'll go all the way down to everyday bourbons and so forth. So it's not always going to be this super expensive stuff, but I am starting out with it. So just to, kind of wow you guys, if you will. Here's the George T. Stag from the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. Again, this is barrel proof at 130.4, and it's aged about 15 years. And then finally, I'm not going to bias myself, but one of the best things I've ever had, including the Pappies, is the William LaRue Weller from the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. This is the Weeded Expression. This one is bottled at 134.5 proof, and it is aged for 12 years. There we go. I intend for these bottles to last a long time. I opened them when I first started reviewing them, but now they're going to go back on the shelf and I'll start drinking other things. And when I have that special occasion, I'm going to go to these, because these obviously are extraordinarily good bourbons, and I want these bottles to last for a while because they did cost quite a bit. All right, so first off, we kind of look at the color. And we notice here, I get a little lower so I can see it, kind of lift it up to you a little bit. I don't want to spill them, obviously. For the most part, they're pretty close to the same color. They've got all that kind of sort of orange, brown, amber to auburn color. There's a little bit of subtle differences. I think the Taylor is a little bit lighter, a little more yellowish, brown. The Weller is the deepest, richest in color. It's more of a reddish brown. And then I would say the Eagle Rare and the Stag come more of an orange brown. So it's a little bit more yellow, orange to red, but they've all got that sort of auburn, amber to auburn color and so forth. By the way, my shout out to the University of Virginia. That's where I went to school. And by the way, I'm not a professional bourbon reviewer. I'm a surgeon. I'm still in active practice, and I just do this in my spare time. I'm not monetized, at least not at the moment. So this is really just being done for you, because I'm a bourbon aficionado and a connoisseur. But again, I'm not doing this. I'm not a professional taster. I have done several courses in bourbon tasting, and I've been drinking bourbon for a long time. But I don't make any money off of this, at least at this point in time. I'm not monetized, and I'm not getting any kind of stipends from anyone. So completely unbiased. All right, so we'll start out looking at the body. We'll see, got kind of medium body on the Taylor. Clings to the glass. Not a lot of legs on there. It's a little bit thin. Getting to the Eagle Rare. And a little bit thicker body, a little heavier body. Got more cling to the glass. The fatty acids give it that sort of creaminess that clings to the glass. Some legs start to run down. Getting into the Stag. A lot of time it comes from either aging or high proof. Typically will give you that fuller body. Again, the Stag about the same as the, maybe a little bit thicker. A little thicker than the Eagle Rare. And then finally, we get to the Weller. And I think this has got the fullest body of all. Very creamy, nice cling to the glass. Got those legs that are kind of coming down. Interesting though, none of these are quite as full bodied as the Pappy though. The Pappy definitely had a lot more creaminess than all of these really. All right, now we're gonna go to the nose. Now, when I reviewed these initially one by one, I started from right to left in this thing. And this time I'm going to go from left back to right. I'm actually going up in proof from 100, 101, 130.4, and 135. I'm sorry, 134.5. 100, 101, 130.4, and 134.5. Nose. Again, I'm not going to try to bias myself, but I'm going to see if I have any changes in what I think the second time. Now this is the one. This is the 4 grain. So on that nose, basically, you know, you're getting some of the fruitiness and some of the sweetness from the corn and the caramel corn and little candy corn. This is the one I thought actually was kind of like a like Halloween almost. You've got some candied fruit in there to like a candied apple. This is very, very complex, but again, just doesn't hang on very long. But you got that fruitiness, you got some of that candy corn, caramel, apple, maybe a little peach and so forth in there. Harvest time. We go into the Eagle Rare. And immediately the blackberry is the first one this is the one that's very, very berry. So I get that blackberry, you know, maybe some currant right hits you right away with that fruity, deep berried fruits. Not much spice, maybe just a little bit, you know, a little bit of baking spice, but you know, this is like blackberry cobbler. Again, same, I'm not surprised. This is really what I was getting the last time. Very sweet, very fruity. A little bit, not as spicy, a little bit spice, but not as spicy. So this one's a little more that Halloween, that sort of or harvest time, orchard fruits and candied apple, caramel corn. Here we're getting definitely that blackberry cobbler, definitely the fruity berry notes and so forth, and not as much on the spice. We go to the Stag, and immediately, you know, because this is such a high proof bourbon, you're going to get that blast of alcohol right away. So, you know, give it a second, come back again. Now your nose is more desensitized to the alcohol, and here again, now this one is spicier. This is more of your cinnamon, that cinnamon bun type nose. Definitely more fruit on the Eagle Rare, more spice on the Stag. Blackberry and cinnamon. Blackberry cobbler, Cinnabon. Now the Weller. Again, the alcohol in the beginning, but not as potent as the Stag, even though it's a bit higher proof. I think the wheat, just maybe that mellows it out a little bit more. I don't find this to be as much of a blast as you get with the Stag. And then there's that raisininess. Again, there's the dried fruits, definitely more fruity as well. You know, more breaded donut, sweet. Dried fruits. This is more like fresh berry fruits. This is more dried raisin, maybe some dried cherries and stuff. Again, not as spicy. Definitely the Stag was the spiciest one. All right, now we're going to go to the palate. And we're going to start out here with our Colonel E.H. Taylor 4 grain bottled in bond at 100 proof, aged 12 years. This is bobbing for apples, dudes. It's like if you're at a Halloween party, man, you're putting your face down there getting that candied apple. That's really what I'm getting. You know, the little candy corn that you play the little party gag, catch it in your mouth. This definitely, you know, this Halloween. This would be a great Halloween party drink. It's got some pumpkin pie spice in there, so there's a little bit of spice too. The rye does come through on the spiciness. But your corn's giving you that candy corn, and that wheat, I think, is giving you more of that kind of apple, orchard fruit type notes or flavors. And kind of the same thing on the finish. It's longer than it was. The last time I drank this, I thought it was fairly short. I am finding it's a bit better this time. It does have a little bit longer finish. Those orchard fruits are hanging in there a little bit longer. It's a little bit of oak, not too much on the oak, and not much on the caramel either. It's definitely more orchard fruit and candiedness, the candied apple, the candy corn, and so forth. But some of that pumpkin pie spice is still there. It definitely is lasting longer, so I'm a bit more impressed this time around than I was the last time. I do find it's a little bit longer finish, not as short as I found it was before. We go to the Eagle Rare. This is 17 years. It's the oldest of all of these bourbons here. It's bottled at 101 proof, and this one's never going to change. So your Weller and your Stags are going to vary year to year. They're going to vary potentially how long they're aged, and they're going to vary potentially on what the proof is, the barrel proof, and it's not always going to be the same every year. Both of these years, these are from 2020, both of these years came up very, very high, much higher than average. The Eagle Rare is always going to be constant. It's always 17 years, and it's always going to be 101 proof. I think some of the older ones may have been a different proof, but it's pretty much what Buffalo Trace is going with now. So this is going to be a constant. So year to year, it might be different just because it's a different season, but it's not going to be that much variation. Whereas these are going to vary quite a bit more because of the proof and the amount of time that they're going to age them. So Eagle Rare, 17 at 101 proof. Every bit as good as I remembered it. This is so much, and I love Eagle Rare 10. I have never had the Double Eagle Very Rare. I have not been fortunate enough to find that or to have a pour of it. That goes out to 20 years, but there's so much difference between the 17 and the 10-year Eagle Rare. It's first of all, it's I think the regular Eagle Rare, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is somewhere around 90 proof. This one is 101 proof, and it's 7 years older. But there's the fruit, the berries, that mixed berry, Mrs. Smith's mixed berry cobbler. That's exactly what I taste here. You got those, those baked good notes that come, through with, the vanilla and oak from this is the oaky one. This is the oaky one. It's 17 years, so you're going to get that oak and those vanillins. They're going to come out. That caramels are going to come out of the oak. So you got that vanilla caramel oak. This is definitely an aged bourbon, but it does not diminish that fruit. The fruit is just so awesome. Not as spicy. There's going to be a little bit of baking spice in there coming out of that rye, but it's definitely much more fruity. Really good. This one would be, your pie shop, your cobbler shop, where you're going to get that delicious berry cobbler. So much blackberry. Blackberry bomb, you could call this one, I suppose. Right away, that blackberry just is right there from start to finish, all the way to the finish. Finishes longer than the E.H. Taylor. Not incredibly long, but I would say medium to long finish. But that blackberry, it just dominates this bourbon all the way through from the start to the finish. I still have that blackberry cobbler flavor. I love it. It's amazing. So fruity and delicious. Now the Stag. Okay, now we got George T. Stag, and this one is bottled at 130.4 proof. It is aged 15 years. I only need my reading glasses when I'm looking down and close. I don't need them for distance. I don't usually wear them during the videos because I'm not necessarily trying to read things. Occasionally I'll grab a bottle and try to read the proof off of it, and I'm just sort of like, I can get it. But obviously the glasses and reading the note cards was necessary. So the Stag, here we go. This is hot. This reminds me of the E.H. Taylor Barrel Proof, which is one of the hottest things. I think the one I reviewed was 131 something proof. maybe 131.1. I have to look back and remember, but that was one of the hottest things I've ever reviewed. This one's hot, and you know it all the way through, all from the initial burst of alcohol on your palate all the way down. That Kentucky hug comes all the way down through it, and this one's spicy. So this is cinnamon. Okay, if this was blackberry, this is cinnamon. This would be like a Cinnabon. Okay, you know those kiosks in the mall where you go get the cinnamon rolls? They're just amazing. You know, they take that cinnamon sugar butter layer that they put all over that dough, and then they bake them up, and you put that vanilla or cream cheese icing on it. This is Cinnabon. Cinnamon, vanilla, spice, not that fruity. You know, you got so much fruit in this Eagle Rare. You got a lot more spice in this George T. Stagg. And it's a hot one. It's like kind of like that. Those little Fireball candies too. And it's a long finish all the way. I still have that kind of cinnamon warmth inside of here. This is the stuff you would want to drink basically if you were sitting outside on a cold night, you know, around a campfire and so forth, because this Stagg's going to warm you up just like the E.H. Taylor Barrel Proof did. Wow, this is a hot and spicy one. Not sweet, not very. Although at the very end, well, let me see what I can do with this. You get, you know, first hits your tongue. There's a little initial sweetness because of, you know, taste buds in front of the tongue, picking up more of that sweetness. And then the spice just rolls through, and there may be a little sweetness at the end, but don't look for this one to be all that sweet. Look for this one to be spicy, hot, cinnamon. Look for the Eagle Rare to be your fruity, sweet cobblery goodness, brown sugar crumbles on a blackberry cobbler. And look for the Taylor to be more of your kind of balance of flavors between some of the sweetness of the corn, so a tiny little bit of spice from the rye, and a lot of kind of candy or orchard fruit, apple and peach, which I think maybe comes a little from the wheat and so forth. But anyway, so fruity, spicy. Okay, again, try not to be biased because I love this stuff. I've had several bottles of this. This is my third bottle I think I've had of the William Rue Weller, and I think it's one of the best things I've ever had. But let me see, because I'm actually comparing it now. I'm going to have to do this straight up against. I mean, it's a 12-year bourbon. You think you would compare it to the 12-year Pappy, but this thing is way, way better than the 12-year Pappy. You'd really have to put it up against the 20 and the 23. I've got a bottle of 25 Pappy, only one of 710 in the world. Watch the reviews. We reviewed those. We even compared to the rest of the Pappy. But that one was, because of the floral notes, I think was just a little bit too over the top, and I kind of backed up to the 23 as my favorite. When I did the original reviews, I thought the 20 was better. But this, you'd have to run this against the Pappy 20 or the Pappy 23. It's way better than the Pappy 12. But here we go. William LaRue Weller from the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, the wheated bourbon, the original wheated bourbon. You might be able to see that on the glass there. Okay. And this is 134.5 proof, okay? The hottest of all of these, or at least the highest proof of all of these. And it's aged for about 12 years. There's that raisin again. Let's see what it does here. There's that cocoa. I'm going to do this again. A couple of things I've noticed. I initially thought that the Weller, despite it being 134.5 proof, I initially thought that it really did not drink that hot. I thought it actually drinks lower than its proof point. And when I had it by itself, when I did the review by itself, I really believe that. Now, after having that stag, and there's still some of that cinnamon fire inside of my esophagus and my pharynx, this thing is a lot hotter than I realized it. You know, I mean, I know it's hot. It's the hottest of all of these. The highest proof, it's 134.5. I still think it drinks a bit lower than its proof point, maybe in the 120 range. I don't think it drinks as hot as the stag, but it definitely is hotter than the last time I reviewed it. So, but I get that that cocoa. You know, I got cocoa towards the end. I apologize. I've got my little dog down here who's like scratching at my leg, and she's a sweetheart. But she's not in the video. Maybe one day I'll put them in the video. But for now, you're not quite invited to Bourbon Rocks just yet. Okay, later. And so it does drink a little bit hotter than I thought it did initially. But I'm definitely, getting some of that cocoa, which I didn't get until the end the last time. I'm getting a little up front now. You can see her nose just coming up above the chip. Alan, sit. Chocolate raisin, but there's that flavor that I truly love about this stuff. It's a wheated bourbon, so you expect that baked good flavor. And there's that taste that makes this so amazingly delicious. It is that custard-filled donut. It's that vanilla custard inside of that sweet Krispy Kreme donut. Anyone out there, you got a Krispy Kreme, you got the two kinds of chocolate covered Krispy Kreme donuts. You got the one that's like the white icing, and you got the one that's the vanilla custard. This is more the vanilla custard one, and it is out of this world. This is an amazing, amazing, amazing bourbon. So complex, so rich, and so from that cocoa to the sugary sweetness of the donut to that, that baked wheatness of the donut to that vanilla custard coming out of that barrel, the vanillins in the barrel. And it's hotter than I remembered it the last time. I like high proof bourbons. I have no problem with high proof bourbons. In fact, I prefer high proof bourbons. I think you get a lot more flavors out of the wood on the high proof. But whereas, the stag definitely drinks as proof. This is a little bit less. It's hotter than it was the last time I had it, but I'm still not going to say it drinks 134.5 proof. I think it's closer to 120 proof when I, have it now, but you still have that just amazing chocolatey vanilla custard, very creamy mouthfeel. It's just, it is absolutely amazing. So again, don't want to get too long in the video. Here we are at 38 minutes. I'm already starting to approach what we did with the Pappy, and I apologize for making this so long, but I figured that, seeing as what we're doing is a review of the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection bourbons, and the fact that I actually added in, and I don't think this has ever been done on the internet, my proposal, Bourbon Rock's proposal for the fourth. If Buffalo Trace was to put a fourth bourbon in the BTAC collection, I would put in the E.H. Taylor 4 grain. So now let's rank them, okay? These are all absolutely amazing bourbons. They're all aces in my opinion. You can't go wrong with any of them, but you're going to have a hard time finding them. You're not going to get them at list price unless you win the lottery, and you're going to pay well over $1,000 for each one, probably up to $3,000 for the Weller. The Stag and the Eagle Rare probably come in around $1,000 to $1,500, maybe about $2,000 for the 4 grain, because it's so rare. But they're going to be very expensive. If you can find a pour in a restaurant, by all means take it. But that's not going to be cheap either. So we're going to rank them. First, we're going to let's go from bottom up actually. So from number 4. I'm going to go with the E.H. Taylor 4-grain. This is a very interesting bourbon. The only 4-grain bourbon from Buffalo Trace. It's got a lot of that complexity that, from the 4 different grains. You've got the corn sweetness. You've got that spiciness from the rye, and you've got that kind of fruitiness, I think, that comes more from that kind of weededness, that softness and so forth. The only problem with it really is simply that it's just a bit thin and a bit short. Now, I think it's much better than it was the first time I drank it, but still I'm getting some thinness out of that. And I'm going to finish all of these. Don't worry. It's the weekend, so I can. Then in number 3, I'm going to put the Stag. Very, very hot. Okay, it's spicy. It's good. There's a lot of wonderful cinnamon notes in here. You're getting just a very powerful blast. It's just maybe a little bit too hot. And keep in mind, we're still talking about some of the best bourbons in the world, so don't think this as being bad, but just relatively compared to the other ones, it's just a little bit hot, and you get a little bit too spiced, not enough fruit, not enough sweetness in it, compared to the rest. Again, they're all great, so don't let, 4th place on this is still they're all aces. They're fantastic bourbons. But I'm going to put the Stag in 3rd place just because it's just a little bit too much heat and a little bit too spicy and not sweet enough. Number 2 is going to have to be the Eagle Rare. This thing is a blackberry bomb. If you love fruit, you will absolutely love this. This is berry fruit. This is cobbler shop. This is Mrs. Smith's mixed berry cobbler. Fantastic, very sweet, a little bit spicy, but much more fruit forward. Absolutely amazing, amazing bourbon. And finally, that leaves the winner. The William LaRue Weller, I still believe, is one of the best bourbons in the world. It's going to be up there with your higher age Pappies. Much better than the Pappy in the 10 and the 12. This would be comparable to a 12-year Pappy, but it drinks much better, probably because it's higher proof. The highest Pappies are still 107 proof. There's no barrel proof Pappy. So even though it's only 12 years old, it's going to have the complexity that you're going to get out of the older Pappies because it's barrel proof. So it's going to pull so much more flavor from the barrel. This is the most amazing thing. I mean, you've got that Krispy Kreme donut with the vanilla custard and that chocolate, icing on it, the cocoa, the vanilla. It is absolutely amazing. It drinks a little hotter tonight than it did the first time I had it, but still not as hot as the Stag. Amazing. The William LaRue Weller is the best of the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. I'll put them up here one last time so you can see the order. We got the Taylor in 4th place. We've got the Stag in 3rd place. We've got the Eagle Rare in 2nd place. And we have the Weller in 1st place. That's the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, the 3 bourbons that Buffalo Trace does put out, and then the one that I propose. And sorry, folks, I even went over the Pappy. We're at 43 minutes, but check us out on bourbonrocks.com. And again, if you don't want to watch the whole thing, at least read the transcript because you can get all the info. And I thank you very much for putting up with me all that time. I hope you enjoyed it. Please check us out on bourbonrocks.com and subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much.